Okay, we are officially recording everything you say and do, and it will be held against you oh wait, that's a different, sorry, completely different story. Anyway, welcome to our Friday leadership training. Thanks for coming out, everybody. So here's what I'd like to do. This is going to be interesting. See if somebody can help me. What is our mission? There's 5 things in our mission. Can you tell me what those 5 things are, anybody?
Disrupt labor services, align with customers, build people, give back. Missing one.
Innovate.
Innovate. There you go. Good. Now that's good, Techie. So we want to make sure we keep working on these. This is something that Ted's pretty passionate about sharing. He wants everybody to know those things. They don't have to be word perfect, and they don't have to be necessarily in order. If you remember them, and I look at it kind of this way. First, we build people. If you can remember that we build people, that's why we're here on this call. Then we, want to, when we think of people and what our company, as we're building, what do? We want to align with our clients, right? And then when we align with them, we want to come up with good ideas. We want to innovate. So that's cool. So we can think of that. And then we have our disrupting labor services, because that's part of innovation, is disrupting the labor services. And lastly, and very importantly, is to give back when we're, when we are looking at being successful and all those sorts of things. So we should always want to give back whenever we can. So that was good, Techie. You were close, and Ashley helped you finish it off. So in that vein, let me pull this up real quick. Share my screen. Okay. And Techie, since you were already kind of the one doing this, can you, this is just the first one, and we'll talk about these. So I went through each of these 5 pieces and just kind of explained them a little bit more. So can you read that? Build people.
Yep. To respect an honored individual and help their personal progression, that you can develop and grow here better than you could anywhere else, and that you have fun, create meaningful relationships, and get paid well as you go.
Right. So who wants to build great relationships, have fun, and get paid well as you go? I mean, how exciting is that? I think that's a really cool part of our of why we're here. So building people, that's what building people is about. And we want to make sure that as we talk about all these things, you're the managers, you're the ones who are kind of leading the way, and we want to be able to give people these opportunities and make sure that they're enjoying themselves. I can't tell you how many times I've, just in this company alone, when I've talked with salespeople, when I talk with people we hire and I do training, one of the biggest things I say all the time is, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. If you're not enjoying it and having fun, there's something wrong. So maybe it's not a good fit. Maybe you're in the wrong path, whatever the case may be, but you should be having fun. That doesn't mean every day. Sometimes you get those days, but for the most part, we should be really enjoying and having fun. So, and as we build and as we grow along the way, we build those relationships. So, all right. Any other comments or questions on what those 5 pieces of our mission are? Remember them. remember them, and we should kind of test each other and see if we can remember what they are off the top of our head very quickly. So, okay. If there's nothing else, we'll move into the kind of the final piece for our creative thinking. I sent out a sheet to you, at least I hope I did, that you should have been able to look at. Did everybody receive that little Word document? No? Did I not send the document? I thought I sent it. Okay, well, I have it, and we'll pull it up, and it'll be fairly easy for us to follow along. So I need your help in the participating part of this for sure. So let me just pull this up, and we will look at it together. Hang on just a second. Okay. I thought for sure I sent it out last night in an email, but I could have sent the wrong thing or didn't push send or whatever. So my bad. But this kind of carries on. I want to discuss, there's 5 things here as we go through today, and this will finish off creative thinking, and then next week we'll get into another lesson. So how do I discover the joy of creative thoughts? And here's 5 ways, okay? So the first, number 1, is to remove creative killers, okay? So here's what I'd like you to do. I want you to go through this list, and I want you to be very honest with yourself, and I want you to think and go through and mark each one of the ones that you have a tendency to do, okay? So if you say, I'm not a creative person, and many of you have already said that on this program a week or so ago, a couple of weeks ago, you're like, I'm not a creative person. I'm not highly creative. So I want you to mark those things that you have a tendency to say or do, and let's just talk about those. So take a second, go through the list, and put a check mark or a number by those that you do. And maybe you do none of them, and that's great. We'll talk about that. But any of the things that you do, let's mark those down. Any of the things that you do. Sorry. Okay. Did I take you off the screen? Are you guys still seeing the page that we need to?
We see it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I just sent it to you. It was sitting in my draft box. Sometimes my computer has a tendency to hang on to something instead of sending it. But so I just sent it to you so you can each have a copy of these 5 things. So I apologize that you didn't get it yesterday with a chance to kind of go over it. Okay. All right. So let's talk. Shantae, what were some of the things that you marked down?
The things I put were, I'm not a creative person. So for years and years and years, I would say not creative, but I would use the word artistic. I would say, I'm not an artistic person. And I would say to people that were artistic, that painted or drew or things like that, I would say, oh, I'm so jealous of those people. Like, I wish I was artistic. I wish I could draw. I wish I could paint. And so I realized one day that that was just a limiting belief. And really, I had no reason why I felt like I wasn't artistic or I couldn't do those things because I had never really tried. And so I did give it a shot. And so now I paint regularly. So
Cool.
these things, these right here, these
Yeah.
are mine.
Yeah. And now that's awesome.
And I have a whole art studio full of them. But it's still kind of one of those things too, about it being a creative killer, because even though I've come to the place where I realize that I can paint, I'm still working on am I good at painting? Do I think I'm creative enough? Do I think they're good enough? And that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting thing though. So again, there's still that limiting belief on some things. And remember, we're talking about creative thinking and being creative, and there are things that stop us. We talked about this a week or so ago. All of us have it in us. It's inside of us. It's never not been inside of us. It's always been there. You just haven't used it. You haven't pulled it out. And then we start saying, as we go through our lives and we get to the ages that we are, and people have told us certain things and we've believed things that people have told us, and all of a sudden now we feel like, oh yeah, I'm not a creative person. No, you are. You are. You may not even go down the road that Shantae went down in art, but that doesn't mean you're not a creative person. So if you're not, then what are you? If you can't create, what are you? So, Shane.
If you tell yourself that you can't do things, then you're not going to do it. I look at my son when I was teaching him how to ride his bike, and I was running behind him and he is crying and saying, I can't do it. I can't do it. And he's looking down and I said, Parker, look up. And he looked up and he's pedaling and I'm 30 feet away from him. And it was all in his mind, right? So if you continue to tell yourself, I can't be artistic, I can't do this, I can't close deals, I can't fill these orders, I can't do these things, you're not going to do it because your mind is really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So Shane, what were some of any of the things that you might have marked down?
Be serious. I'm way too serious all the time. Extremely serious. I love it when I see the smiles on here. It's interesting because I look at a lot of these and I try and have as much, I don't try, I do. I have as much fun as I possibly can in both work and life. And I feel that I am very creative. I have this saying that I say, no is just short for not yet. And, when I go out and I visit clients and clients say, no, and so I know it's just a matter of time. Right. So,
yeah. Yeah. So again, there's a lot of, crazy things that we get into our head. Maddie.
That just made me think of, so I had marked, we don't have the money, because search is running really lean right now. But I feel like if we were more creative, we could come up with ideas to still do it with less money. And so not making money the barrier, just putting a little bit more creativity into the idea instead of saying, no, it's more of a not yet, like Shane's saying.
Yeah. So you said something interesting and you threw a word in there, and this is part of, overcoming those things. You said, I think if, so yeah, it's just a matter of, hey, sit down and be creative, and that's exactly right. Sit down and how many companies have started with nothing and grown into multi-million, billion, trillion-dollar companies, but they started with no money and had no idea how they were going to get money. But because they were creative, look what they created, there are many, many, many examples of that. Shane.
Netflix. Look at Netflix. Netflix went to what? Blockbuster. And when they first started and said, hey, we have this idea, we want to sell it to you. And Blockbuster laughed at them. Look at Kodak and the film industry. with digital cameras. You know, they had the technology for digital cameras long before they actually came out with digital cameras. And so it's funny what people say, no, that's not going to work. And you just need that creative person to say, all right, I'll prove you wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing, you know, some of these things. So that was good. Yeah, we don't have the money, and that's a limiting belief, you know. So thank you, Maddie. That was good. Okay, who else? Anybody else want to volunteer, or should I pick somebody? Maria.
So for me, it would be, I just had it. We can't afford to make a mistake. I see it within work and my personal life. I do a lot of audits and I answer a lot of VOEs and work verifications and stuff. And like the simplest mistake, especially like when it comes to being compliant with like E-Verify and I-9s, could like shut us down. People don't understand that, you know, it could shut us down completely. And then I see it in my personal life because I have kids. I'm a single mom. I'm raising them by myself, and I can't afford to make a mistake that's going to affect them. So I'm really hard on myself when it comes to that.
Yeah, and that's a tough one, but you know, life's made of mistakes, and we're going to continue to make mistakes, which is just, you know, just part of living. Any good things ever come of mistakes? I know of a company called 3M. 3M made a mistake on some glue, and a lot of you are using their mistake. It's called sticky notes. Okay, they made a mistake, and then they invented sticky notes because of the mistake. What an amazing mistake that was. So Ashley Labram.
Mine tends to be along the lines of like play is frivolous. Like that one really stood out to me. When my kids were small, I really struggled with it and getting down on the floor, playing. We're too old for that. Past it, just on the grind. And so I think that one stood out to me the most.
Yeah. And isn't that sad? I mean, when we get in that mode, we should be still playful. I mean, we should be like adults that haven't ever really grown up. I mean, it's just fun to be able to play and enjoy and create, and you know, again, just have fun. That's part of life. Again, I go back to Walt Disney. Walt played a lot. I mean, he was that kind of person. He built a train in his yard that he could sit on and take all of his grandkids around on this big, huge track on this little tiny train, you know, and he's a grandfather and he's playing still, you know. So play is not frivolous, you know. That's a good point. So that's a good one. Yeah. Ivan, or excuse me, wait, Kyle first and then Ivan.
Yeah, two of them really stood out to me. That's not logical, it's not practical. I think there's some strength in logic and being practical, but oftentimes it does shut down creativity too. And I think it also kind of depends on what you're in, right? I mean, if you're looking at a company from a very legal side of things and logic and practical and pragmatism is important, right? But I think sometimes we can go a little too far with that on the HR side of things, and there is also strategic HR. It's a very creative thinking process, and sometimes we have to kind of break out of these rules, so to speak, and really dig into the strategic creative side of things. So there's a lot of magic that happens there. But yeah, I think it is a little bit innate with professions like accounting and human resources or a judge or whatever, to be logical, practical, to follow rules, to be, you know, and those have their strengths, and we have to recognize that they have their strengths too. But it can shut down creativity when that's necessary.
Yeah, I think I think with that, Kyle, you know, because we do have this thing where there's left brain, right brain, logical, you know, that sort of thing. And I think that when people are analytical, or they're logical, or they're, you know, numbers people, we have all these different types of.
What is she still putting up in there?
Somebody's kids are. There we go. Okay, so so we have all of these thoughts about, you know, on that analytical side, but there are lots of different types of thinking. And next week, we're going to talk about 11 different types of thinking. It's not just creative thinking. There's strategic thinking and tactical thinking, also all of those things. So there's a place for all of that. It's just that when we're trying to do creative thinking, that we need to be in the creative mode and not limit ourselves. But then there are also times when we need to think logically and we need to think analytically, right? So, and it's great to have this whole mix of people. I'm very right brain dominated. I've learned to be more on the left brain side as I've grown and developed. So I have both of those sides, but I'm very right brain dominated. But it's nice to have left brain dominated people in the group as well. And I think that, you know, that helps, especially in a company. So very good. Thank you, Ivan.
I definitely have some of these that kill my creativeness. Some of them are follow the rules, stay within the lines, don't be foolish. That's not logical, and we can't afford a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you look at yourself now though and go, okay, how do I take these things that I've marked down and how do I work through or bust through those so that I don't limit my creativity? Imagine this. If you followed the rules and that was it, and you colored inside the lines and you didn't make a mistake, what would you innovate? Probably nothing. Okay. So you see, I think that's a really good point, Ivan. You know, we have these things and the list is there to help us, you know, stop the creativity killing. It's really important for us to not just be stuck in a box. We got to get out sometimes. Yes, Belinda?
So I'm just wondering, I'm just thinking about this, and I'm wondering if anyone else experiences this or has this in their personality. I am exceptionally self-disciplined. I'm really, really self-disciplined. And so I would say if you had to say which one is me, I'd probably say I'd say stay within the lines. I don't want to say too much follow the rules because I'm very rebellious and, you know, I tend to sort of, you know, flip my nose at rules sometimes, but I certainly stay in the lines because I'm so disciplined. However, when it comes to getting stuck with a problem or when I'm faced with a challenge or something, my first go-to is, okay, so, you know, what's inside the box, you know? And then when I see that no inside the box things will fit or work, then I sort of, I don't know if anyone else is like this. I'll flip this switch in my head that goes, right, let's think outside the box now, you know?
Yeah.
And then I mentally start thinking all the things that we would say is it can't be done, it's never been done, it's not practical, because I'm all those things. I'm practical, I'm logical, I'm can't fail, blah, blah, blah. But once I've checked all those boxes and none of them work, I have this mental ability to flip the switch and go outside the box. I don't know if anyone else does that. It's just a interesting thing. And it helps me because I usually will find, you know, I'll find something. It may not end up working, but I'll try it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's the whole point, I think, is, you know, being able to flip a switch and say, okay, today I've got to think analytically. Now I've got to think creatively, you know, so that's really an important piece. Ivan.
Yeah, I think what Belinda was saying, I go through that switch once I share my ideas with my team members.
Yeah.
Just, you know, once I share my idea with either Tara or Joe, and they give me that that push to go ahead, that yeah, and I share my thoughts is when it switches over.
Yeah. So I think the main thing with this creativity killers is, can you flip a switch? Do you have blockers? Are you saying to yourself, no, I got to stay inside the lines? Which again is really, yeah, I love the Ashley Labrum story with her son and coloring the tree different colors, like who says you can't do that? And so we can't limit ourselves in these situations. We should be able to color whatever we want to. And, so just make sure, we're going to go to number 2 here, but make sure that you're not letting these creativity killers stop you. So you've all written down the things that you kind of lean to. Take these things and say, okay, how do I correct this? How do I get over some of these things? How do I push through them? How do I flip the switch? So that's why we have them. That's why we have these creativity killer pieces there. So you can look at them and say, yep, that's me. And now I've got to figure out how to be better when it's time to be creative. I need to be able to flip that switch. So thank you. Okay. The second part of the second one is think creatively by asking the right questions. Okay. So here's a list of questions to stimulate creative thinking. And these are important for us. Look, I know Ted has said this a million times about questions, and it's about asking the right questions, and making sure that we're asking better questions. There's a little quote here that I wanted to read. The uncreative mind can spot wrong answers, but it takes the creative mind to spot the wrong questions. Okay, so our job is to learn how to ask the right questions. And so what I want to do on this, you've got a list of questions there. I want you to take a subject. I want you to take an issue. I want you to take something that you can be working on. And I want you to take a few minutes and ask yourself these questions. Okay. So let's just say for an example, I say, how do we find enough people for the jobs that we have currently? How do we fill those orders? Okay. So then I would take these questions and I'd say, why must it be done this way, the way we're doing it? What's the root problem? What are the underlying issues? So what I want you to do is just jot down an issue of some kind, something that you can work on, and then I want you to ask yourself those questions. You can keep it fairly brief. You can dig deeper later, but just start the creative process. Okay? Start the creative process. Ask yourself those questions. There is one question there that talks about metaphor or a symbol. So in case you don't know, a metaphor is a figure of speech. I looked it up for you, that uses a word or phrase for one thing to suggest a likeness or similarity with another thing. For example, you ain't nothing but a hound dog crying all the time. That's a metaphor. That's an old Elvis song, if you don't remember. But that's a metaphor. So when you get to that question, that's what it means. Okay. And if you have a question on that question, let me know and I'll read it to you again. Okay. So take a few minutes, jot down some ideas, ask yourself some of those questions. Let's see what we can come up with. Think creatively, flip the switch. I'll give you a few minutes. And I don't know, sorry to interrupt. I don't know if Maddie will use this, but Maddie's example when she talked about we're running lean and how do we grow our business on on a lean budget, that's a great issue to talk about and ask yourself those questions. So anyway, keep going. Give you another minute or so to get as much as you can. Okay, you can keep writing, keep answering questions. You can also go back into these. I've given you the sheet now, now that I've sent it properly, so that you have some of these questions. And are there other questions? Absolutely. Right, write down other questions too that you should be able to take a look at. And let me just say that again, if you don't think creatively as a leader or a manager, who's going to? Like, who's going to do this? If you don't do it, who's going to? So it's really, really important that we can think this way. And like I said, we have other thinking pieces we'll talk about next week, but if you don't do this, who's going to do it? So, all right, who's got something? I'm going to ask you this. So who's got an issue that they'd like to say, hey, here's the issue I put on paper, and here's some of the answers, to the questions. Anybody brave enough to take a stab, Techie?
My issue is kind of similar to Maddie's in search, and but instead of budget, yeah, as part of it is being a startup is I have a bunch of different tasks I have to complete and different roles I have to play, and so my main issue is how do I maximize my time, because there's just not enough time in the day to complete everything you need to do, and have a few things on my list between prospecting, follow up with clients, assist with recruiting, manage software development, working with marketing on campaigns, build partnerships. It just seems endless, and sometimes it's hard to juggle. But some of the answers I got was, basic productivity.
Read the question. What would be one of the questions you'd ask, and read the answer?
Oh yeah. So how can I maximize my time to complete all of my daily tasks? That's the question.
Okay.
Because the issue is I feel like there's not enough time in the day to do everything. And then some of the thoughts I came up with was time box daily. It's a method of productivity to list out every single daily task and just commit an hour or so, 15 to 20 minutes, or however long I need to do that, and make sure I have that plan either at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day to make sure everything I need to get done gets done.
Okay. Good. Thank you. All right. Who else? Okay. Okay, Shane. We'll go to Shane first.
You can always rely on me to jump in. I'll jump in and help. I want to talk more about something, how we did this already, right? How when I first came in, I started to get a better understanding of how the staffing division was setting up new clients. And it was kind of the 7 habits of highly effective people, right? Seek first to understand, then to be understood. And so it was to, like Techie said, it was to sit down and kind of understand what was going on first, and then think outside of the box and how can we do it more, save time, because that's one thing that we really don't have a huge luxury of, is time. And the more that we can save time, the better. You have to realize that most processes and procedures that were put together really were Band-Aid fixes because they needed to be done right there, right at that time. And so by looking at those periodically and saying, is this really the right way to do it? And then coming up with new ideas and brainstorming makes a huge difference to save a ton of time for everyone.
Yeah, so I think, part of what you did, and, you correct me if I'm wrong, but one of that very first question, why must it be done this way, right? So you have a good example of, just the agreement and how we process that, So you ask yourself, why do we have to do it this way? And then you're able to come up with ideas and create, better ways, more efficient ways to do those things. And that's perfect. That's exactly what we're striving for. We could have said, well, Shane, because that's the way we've always done it. And so that's not what we want to do or be as a company, is that's the way we've always done it. So you have to do it that way. So, great job with that. Thank you. Shantae.
Okay. So the first question I was kind of asking myself is like, how do I define creativity? Because like in the example that I gave earlier about the painting, I kept saying I wasn't creative, but I'm a great problem solver in life, in business, I'm very resourceful in those kinds of things, but I never viewed the problem solving and resourcefulness as creativity. So I think that's a really good question. But the problem that I wrote down on here was, and I think a lot of people feel this way on this call, just how do you have enough time, energy, focus, bandwidth, everything to be a good leader and to also do what you need to do? Like for me, sales. How do I be enough of a leader for my team, but then also be a great salesperson at the same time, and that juggling? So the question I asked was, what's the root problem? And the answer to me is maybe a little bit of self-doubt, thinking that I can't do both or that I'm not going to be successful at doing both. Again, just kind of that limiting belief that maybe I don't have the time to do both, or I'm not capable of juggling and doing both and being successful at both. And then also comes down to time management. Maybe that's something that I need to explore a little bit more and find some more creative solutions around. And then I asked the question, who has the different perspective on this issue? And I think that kind of, to me, speaks about, finding someone that's good at what you're trying to accomplish and getting them as a mentor, reaching out. And obviously the person that comes to mind for me is Belinda. She's a great resource for me. She's really good at being a strong leader. Also, she's operationally strong. She's great at sales. She can kind of do it all, and she's done it all and been really successful at, dividing her time and making sure that all the wheels are turning. So I can ask her more questions. I can ask her for more suggestions. Just kind of that type of stuff. So
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I was hoping that you would ask yourself, who does have a different perspective on this? Because when you think about it, Shantae, I mean, we have a lot of talent, people that have been, have a lot of experience in the industry itself. And like for myself, I was a selling branch manager, so I know what you're talking about. I was a selling branch manager. I had my own area. I had to run my operations team, all of them doing their filling orders. And I had a salesperson at the time that I was making sure he was successful. And, so there is that balance. And we have a lot of people who have done the same thing I have. So that's there for people to rely on and to ask questions. And I think sometimes we don't ask that question, you know, who does have a different perspective? Who can I go to just to get some ideas? And I like the last question too, if you think about it for you. What happens if we don't do it all? Don't do it at all. What happens if we don't do it at all? Or, you know, so all of these things, you know, really, these are good questions to kind of push ourselves on, you know, in this respect. So, anybody else have one they'd like to share? Thank you, Shanti. That was good. Okay, I was going to call on this person. I saw them writing away, and it was Ashley Labram. She was sewing. She had her head down, and she was writing some stuff. And I thought, okay, she's got an idea she's working on. So Ashley, you need to share it with us.
Okay. So I've been struggling with studying for the PHR. I bought all the tools. I was very excited, and every time I sit down to study, I find myself not absorbing the material at all. And so I was using these questions to kind of get an idea of what I could do. So what is the root problem was one I wrote down. And I think it's that I've discovered I'm an auditory learner, and all the material I have is very much reading, which I enjoy, but apparently don't absorb academic stuff. And then I asked, why is this important? And it's literally like the necessary information and skills development to move where I'd like to be. And so it's super crucial. It's not one of those that can be scrapped. We got to go back to the questions and figure out why. So I wrote down, like, what are the underlying issues? I'm finding it hard to focus. I'm not absorbing the material. I find myself, I'll read a section and then I'll actually just go onto YouTube and search up whatever the title was of that section, and watch people explain it to me, which I find has been helpful. But that was me trying to sort out how to get my life together.
No, that's really good. Before we jump to Kyle, that's really good. And I think, again, asking these questions will really kind of open things up. I know it must be hard to study human resources. I'd give Kyle a bad time about this. I'd be falling asleep. Okay, now Kyle loves it. He eats, sleeps, and drinks it. But I'd be going, oh, HR stuff? Are you kidding? So we all have our thing, and I think it's important that you looked at and said, I learn best auditorily. So how do you get this information where you can listen to it rather than read it? So Kyle, I'll turn it over to you.
I was just going to say, don't worry, Ashley. All that sounds extremely familiar.
Oh, good.
and I had to go to every source possible and read it, see it, listen to it hundreds of times before it's stuck. So just keep at it. You're doing amazing.
Thank you.
And if you have to take the test a couple of times, oh well.
Right.
It's part of life. So Shane?
Actually, what's cool about that is you and I learn very similarly. I see the value in learning these things, right? I just don't have the attention span to sit and read. And like you, I'll read a few chapters and I'm gone, right? I'm not thinking about the reading, so I have to reread it 4 or 5 times. And at that point, it's pointless. But just like you, it's coming up with new ideas on how to absorb the information and how it works for you. Right. So whether it's through YouTube videos or through Audible or some other means, it doesn't mean the information you're not trying to learn isn't extremely important. You just have to figure out how it works best for you.
And the cool thing is we have all this technology nowadays that we can actually do that. You know, if I was studying for a test back when I was young, you know, you had one way to study for it, and that was read it. That was it. You had no other way. There was no auditory. There was no videos on YouTube. There was no YouTube. So it's fantastic that we have all these resources that we can kind of go to. So that's great. Thanks for sharing. Oh yeah, Maria.
I turned off my camera, by the way, because my face was pink again. I don't know what my laptop is doing. For me, what I was thinking, the question I was thinking about was what happens if we don't do it all? I'm a very big, like, yes person. People need stuff and I'll be like, yes, I'll do it. Oh, can I give you this? Sure, I'll do it. So by the end of the day, I'm really like, shoot, what did I actually get done? Because I did a million little things for everybody else. And it all comes down to like what I did the other day is I told Kyle, I have this list of stuff I'm working on and I will not put anything else on my plate because I cannot do it. And it just feels to me like if I don't do it all, like I'm gonna disappoint Kyle or I'm gonna disappoint something with the company. Something's not gonna get done and the company's gonna suffer for it. So that's how I feel with that.
Yeah, so asking these questions is really good. And part of that is, of course, prioritization. You know, what's the most important and what's urgent, what's pulling at you, and just prioritizing those things, So, but asking you the questions will help you to kind of cipher through that and going to your manager to find out, hey, this is what I came up with, this is how I'm prioritizing, this is what seems to be most important, and I'm going to follow that, follow it down. So I think that's good, and I think it's good that you recognize and you're aware of that. So that's perfect, thank you. So let's go to question number 3. Develop a creative environment. So a creative environment encourages creativity. It places high value on trust among team members and individuality. It embraces those who are creative. It focuses on innovation, not just invention. Places a high value on options. Is willing to let people go outside the lines and appreciates the power of a dream. How do we create that environment? You see the information. How do we create that environment? Do you feel, and be honest, is this environment we're currently in a place like that, at least in some respects? And if it's not, what pieces could we be better at in that deal? Techie.
For me, one of the key environments is not being micromanaged by anybody. It's hard to be creative when you feel like there's someone overbearing and stopping you from being your true creative self. And I personally feel like that's, in some ways, that's what our mantra here in Smart Resources is avoiding micromanagement. And in some ways, we kind of take that a little bit further. So it's hard to find that balance of, keeping accountability, yet, making sure we can be creative and high performing. So.
Yes, thank you. So do we focus on innovation here? Do we focus on dreams as we have meetings with our teams, as we have meetings with our leadership and management? Are we that kind of company? Are we doing that? So I think it's a good question to ask. Are we open here? Are we forcing you into a box? Are we allowing you to be innovative, creative? So we need to set up those creative environments. And it doesn't mean it's necessarily all the time, but sometimes we have to be able to set that up and say, okay, look, this is an open discussion, color outside the lines, think creatively, be innovative, all of those pieces, dream. I mean, if you don't have dreams, are we suffocating your dreams? Or do you feel like you have the ability to dream big? I've said this to numerous people on this call, some of you. Come and dream with us. Let this be the vehicle that gets you to the dream that you have. And it is an amazing opportunity for us to do that. Okay? It's an amazing opportunity for us. So think about that. Answer that question for yourself. Is this a creative environment? And if it's limiting somehow, write that down. Let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that, what that means to you. Okay. All right. Number 4 says spend time with other creative people. Joe, would you read the rest of that for me?
Can you hear me okay?
Now I can.
Okay. Spend time with other creative people. Creativity is contagious. Think of brainstorming sessions. The interplay of ideas can be electric. It's a fact that you begin to think like the people you spend a lot of time with.
Okay. The very first sentence, 3 words, creativity is contagious. I love that. When you hang around creative people, it's contagious. It taps into you. Joe.
I was just going to add, it's really interesting when you do brainstorming sessions, how the creative killers in section 1 start to creep in and pop out. I've tried that before, or, that's, or we saw that try to work for this other person, and it didn't work for them. It's just creativity killers. And when you allow that to creep into the creativity or brainstorming sessions, it crushes and destroys and eliminates all momentum. And so it's really hard to watch yourself and make sure. And it's also, remember, when you go into those types of sessions, remind people that those are creativity killers beforehand, and say, hey, we're going to say that's a creativity killer if we see these things creeping into this, and let's get on to how it could work instead of staying stuck on, hey, we tried something like that before and it didn't work.
Yeah. So when we were at our strategy session, and Jessica's not here, but Shane is. Shane, I said that at the very beginning. What did I say?
Of course, you had to call me out on that. Can I get some Cliff Notes?
Boy, did I make an impression, didn't I?
You always do. You always do.
I said exactly that. I said, before we start brainstorming, we are not going to shut each other down or say things like we've already done that, or whatever, so that we can allow our minds to open up.
Here's the funny
That's
thing,
actually
Terry. We
word
did
for
it
word
anyway,
what you said.
accidentally.
Yeah. What, Joe?
I was just saying we did it anyway accidentally. It's so easy to let those things creep in, and we did it anyway accidentally.
Well, so it was funny because Shane had said something. He goes, now this is not really, like what you said, Carrie, and then he explained himself, and it wasn't a creativity killer. He was just explaining something, but he remembered and said, now, so this isn't a negative thing, okay. So that's the point though, is we can't, when we're brainstorming and we're doing storyboarding like Disney does, we can't allow ourselves to, we can't edit. Okay. So I've written a couple of books. You guys have heard me say that a few times. The worst thing you can do is edit while you're writing. Like, write the book and then edit later. And it's so easy to go, okay, so I didn't put a comma here, I didn't do that. I mean, you'll never get your book written. You've got to write the book and then edit later. You have people that will edit for you. So do the same thing when you're brainstorming. Don't edit. Do not edit. Just come up with ideas. And so thinking about, about that is really, really important. So spending time. Here's what I want you to do. Who do you know that is a creative person, or some people that that are creative that you could spend more time with? I want you to write that down on this paper that you've been working on. Who are some creative people that you can spend more time with? Okay, so you've written that down. I'm not going to ask you who they are, but I want you to just do one thing, and that is to say, when will I reach out to these people or this person and spend a little bit more time with them? so that you can start delving into, hanging out with creative people. Hang out with creative people. And be that kind of person that other people can say, yeah, I'm going to hang out with them too, because they're creative. They have all kinds of ideas, and it's cool to be around them, and they make me better, and I become more creative and innovative because of that. Ashley Labrum, sorry.
Goes along with that. I had my oldest child has a friend, and his mom was getting this group together. They were getting together to wrap jewelry, like do wrap jewelry. And she invited me, and I was like, I don't know, I'm not very creative, and I went because I wanted a relationship with her. And the group was so inviting and helpful. And I didn't leave that one session, that very first session, thinking I couldn't be creative. I didn't leave thinking like, oh, this just isn't for me. I discovered a new hobby that was way outside of the lines. And so I think having those creative people around you really does make a difference.
It does. It does. And I've seen it. Look, I have 2 grandsons. One of them's 11, one of them's 10. Both of them love Legos. But when these boys get together, and I have a really young grandson as well, but then there's 2 granddaughters. When they all get together, they fight and they tease and they do all, just stupid stuff that kids do. But if I put my 2 grandsons, those older 2, if I put out a blanket and I bring out some buckets of Legos, I'm not kidding you, for 5 hours, they'll sit there and do Legos, and they won't even hardly talk. And their minds are just inventing. They're just building stuff, and the fighting just ended. So when I can get them in creative mode, man, some cool things happen, and they build all kinds of cool things, and they come and say, look what we just made. And and I'm like, okay, this is so much different than the 2 of you hitting each other all the time. So it's a lot of fun. So it's really important to hang out with creative people. So find those people and start doing it. Okay. It gets your mind going too. And, like Kyle's example, get out away from the analytical sometimes and go hang out with creative people. I know Kyle does. He's a musician. That's very creative. Okay. So the last one that we have here on the list, and then we'll be finished, is get out of your box. Okay. Belinda mentioned that, being in the box there a little bit, but we got to get out of the box. If you don't know who Katharine Hepburn is, you can, she's a famous actress that was around a long time ago. If you obey all the rules, you miss all the fun. Okay. So again, color outside the lines, break the rules, make mistakes. Otherwise you miss all the fun. You don't allow yourself to do those crazy fun things that you could do. So now you don't need to break all the rules, but creative thinkers are out of the box thinkers. Remember we did the exercise last week where you got to color, or you got to draw outside the box in order to complete the assignment. You literally had to go outside the box to do it. So if you want to break out of your own box, you got to get into someone else's. And that statement is meant to say, read broadly. Okay. Read broadly. Now, if you don't read, listen broadly. You can read books and listen to books, and I do both. I have a huge Audible collection, but I also have tons and tons and tons of books, and I've done both, and I like to do both. And I also watch lots of stuff. I spend a lot of my free time on YouTube. Okay, watching things I really enjoy watching and learning about. So we've got to learn to get outside the box. It's okay to be, I think, Belinda, your statement of being disciplined is really important. And I have some great stories on discipline. One of the greatest samurais in the world, Masashi, who was in the 1600s, and he's known as one of the greatest samurais ever. And he was highly disciplined, but also very creative. Okay. So he knew how to get outside the box. He didn't follow the rules of, he was a Ronin samurai, and he didn't follow the rules. He did some things that were way outside of that stay in the box type thing. So I think for all of us to look at ourselves and say, do I stay in the box too much? Am I a creative thinker? Again, as a leader, we need creative thinkers. Again, if you don't do it, who is going to do it? Okay, who will come up with the great ideas? Lots of times the people that we lead and we manage, you know, we need to pull them into this creativity stuff too, but they get so busy with day-to-day stuff. But somebody has to do this. Our job as leaders is looking at from a higher level and coming up with the ideas. If our company is going to move to, you know, become a, you know, 100 million, 200 million, 500 million, it's got to be people like you that are going to think creatively and get us there, and strategically and tactically, and all of the things we're going to talk about next week too. So thank you for your participation, your ideas. This was really good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed hearing. Don't let creativity killers stop you. You know, really get outside of that and start, you know, moving in a direction that that you really need to. Any last thoughts or words? You guys have done a lot of writing today and little assignments. I hope you take it further. I hope you look at these and take it further. But any other comments? Yeah, Maria.
Take the survey, people.
Take the survey. Thank you. That's a good reminder. Shane.
Actually, it sent a chat asking if we had any, or if I had any ideas on kind of helping to learn through your communication styles. I actually have a spreadsheet, not a spreadsheet, but a document that I created a while ago. I'm going to forward it over to Kerry, and he'll send it out when he sends out his recording for this.
Cool.
And so you have that.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's really good. Perfect. Well, that's good. You guys have a great weekend, and we look forward to talking again soon. Next week, we're going to do a new lesson called Think It, Plan It, Do It Now. Okay. Presentation I've given for years, and we'll go through that, and then we'll get on to some other leadership stuff that Ted and I will be working on together. So anyway, have a great weekend. Enjoy your time and be safe out there, and we'll talk to you guys all real soon. Thank you.